Please give a huge welcome to Tom Brodrick.
Hi. I had just graduated college and turned the ripe old age of 23 when I began working as a teacher, coach, and dorm parent at Northwood School, a private boarding high school in Lake Placid, New York. And I'll be honest with all of you, I should never have been hired. I had no experience. In fact, I knew it. In the months leading up to my arrival on campus in August, I had this recurring nightmare where I was going to fail my students and lose my job. So when I got to campus, I sought out my headmaster and I said, hey, I may need some guidance. Can you tell me the plan? And he's like, plan? We're just gonna throw you to the wolves and see if you survive the year. And that's what he did. In particular with this one section of government I had to teach. First of all, it was my largest section. It was full of young men, the majority of whom were the varsity hockey team. They were more concerned about checking opponents than the system of checks and balances. And look, they were old. I had one kid, Big Rick. He was turning 20 before graduation. And they knew I was inexperienced. And it was like blood in the water, and they pressed me and came after me every day. So I started out doing what I saw in high school and college, and of course, that didn't work. So then I went to my colleagues and watched their classes and asked for guidance, and it helped a little, but the real problem was the kids. This was a group of massive young men. I mean, I was the smallest person by far. Big Rick from Montana, he was 6'4", huge shoulders, more of a ranch hand than a hockey player, and he would come up and embarrass me. He came up one day, handed his paper to me and said, Mr. Brodrick, why are you so short? And of course, everyone laughed at my expense. So 6 weeks in, I thought my nightmare was gonna come true and I was not gonna make it. But I kept trying. And in mid-October, we got on a section that I knew well called Media and Society. Look, I have a Bachelor of Arts in Government, and I knew back then that factual, verified, and credible information is imperative to a vibrant democracy. It's also imperative to a small boarding high school, and Northwood was a cesspool of rumor, innuendo, gossip, and conspiracy theories, and I could see it, and these students were the worst culprits. So I got this crazy out-of-the-box idea, and I pitched it to my good friend and colleague, Jeff Edwards, and when I finished, I'm like, what do you think? And he's like, oh yeah, and I'm in, I want to help. So a week later, when my class was scheduled to meet first period, I got there early and opened the door, and out they came. And these kids were big and brash, and they were joking and laughing, picking on each other, picking on me. And finally, Jeff had to yell over the noise of the room when he came to the door right before the bell rang. And he said, hey, Tom, you got a minute? I need to speak to you in the hall. And I'm like, Jeff, class is just about to begin. Can't it wait? And he got a little mad. He's like, no. And the room quieted, and he goes, look, you came to me yesterday and asked for my help. And I have to tell you, I was up all night thinking about it, and you didn't know, I just can't do it. And I looked at him across the silent room, and I said, Jeff, you know this could hurt me, right? And his anger fled, and he said, I do, and I'm sorry. Look, I have a responsibility to the school and to the headmaster, and I want to help. Look, I just can't help. And he left. And the room was silent. And after several seconds, I said, class dismissed, and those kids bolted right out of the room. And when the door closed, the most unexpected thing happened. I started laughing. You see, I had all this pent-up anxiety. I was trying to pull something off, didn't know if I could, and when I did, I laughed. I laughed so hard, I had tears in my eyes, and I was catching my breath, and as I was catching my breath, the door burst open, and there were 7 kids, including Big Rick. And they could see the tears on my cheeks, and they're like, no, 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 Mr. Brodrick, we love your class. We're gonna help you. We're gonna fight this. We're gonna go to the headmaster. We got your back. And I was like, oh, they love my class. And then they ruined it. They said, but you have to confide in us. You have to tell us everything that happened with Mr. Edwards. And when you do, we won't tell anyone, but we'll help you. So I thanked him. I asked him to leave because I had to figure it out. And I wrote a note that said, all classes canceled, put it on the door, and I left campus. I was gone all morning. In a day and age with no cell phones, no one could reach me. And I suspected that might add fuel to the fire that I just lit. I did have to return after lunch for a school meeting, and we held it in a space like this. And the faculty sat on stage, and the students sat in the audience, and as planned, I sat back row, center. And as planned, Jeff came in right after me and sat right in front of me to my right, so that when everyone came in, they could see us, but more importantly, I could see them. And I knew rumors were swirling around campus. So I made the last announcement. I said, class, I need to see my government class in the lecture hall after classes, and I was waiting for them, and when they came in, they were quiet. And I was honest. I said, the events of this morning were a ploy. Mr. Edwards and I did this to ensure that rumors would fly around campus. And of course, the kid's like, no, that's not true. What happened with you two? And another kid's like, oh, how could you lie to me? Big Rick's like, I knew it was a joke. And the other kids shouted him down. And I turned the whole thing by saying, it's not over and I need your help. And they were like, what? I said, I need your help. You need to be my reporters. Go out, find every dirty story you can, bring it to class tomorrow, and we'll discuss it and its ramifications. And they did. And I learned I was a horrible human being. Yep, I was sleeping with the headmaster's wife. Other kids thought I was sleeping with Mrs. Edwards. And then one kid's like, no, it's not faculty, it's students, and we know who. Another kid's like, no, it's not sex, it's drugs. Another kid's like, yeah, I heard you're selling drugs. Give me some. Another kid's like, no, he got arrested for selling drugs. And it went on. I had a kid out of wedlock. I had a secret life as a stripper. I was an escort. And after 10 minutes, we started talking about what it meant for the school. And you know what? They got it that day. And I won them over a little bit. And then over the next few weeks and months, as I got my academic legs under me, I continued to win them over, so much that several of them, including Big Rick, came up to me after graduation and thanked me. For me, though, looking back on it 38 years later, it led me to this point in my career where I have a student-centric approach to teaching. I literally give my kids agency to problem solve. And I ask them to be creative and think outside the box. And above all else, I want them to solve the real-world problems in my project-based class. And this is the truth. None of that would have happened if I didn't have those lovely misfits in government that first year. Thank you very much.